They are all there. They think I am dead.
The polished mahogany coffin had barely touched the lowering straps when someone smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not the awkward expression of someone overwhelmed by grief. It was brief, deliberate, almost relieved. Hidden inside a black luxury SUV parked on a quiet hill overlooking the cemetery, Adrian Mercer leaned forward until his knuckles turned white around a pair of binoculars. His breathing slowed. His eyes locked onto the face in the crowd. "Zoom in," he whispered. Victor Hale adjusted the high-powered camera beside him without taking his eyes off the monitor. "I already did." The image sharpened. Hundreds of mourners stood beneath black umbrellas. Executives wiped away tears. Reporters lowered their cameras in respectful silence. Former employees held white roses against their chests. And in the middle of them all, one man smiled. Then, just as quickly, the smile disappeared. Adrian lowered the binoculars. "I've seen that smile before." Victor looked at him carefully. "You know who it belongs to?" Adrian nodded once. "I just never imagined I'd see it at my own funeral." The priest continued speaking as the coffin disappeared into the earth. "Today we honor a visionary, a leader whose generosity changed countless lives." The words barely reached Adrian anymore. His attention had shifted somewhere far more dangerous. Because whoever smiled wasn't celebrating a death. They were celebrating a victory. Victor quietly closed the monitor. "We can still stop this." Adrian didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the cemetery, where people embraced each other beneath the rain. Some cried so convincingly they deserved awards. Others looked genuinely shattered. But now every face carried a question. Who was mourning him, and who was simply performing? 3 weeks earlier, Adrian Mercer had believed he understood every person in his life. At 42, he had built one of the largest logistics companies in the country from a single rusted delivery truck his father bought secondhand decades before. People called him a billionaire. Employees called him fair. Competitors called him impossible to beat. His father had simply called him stubborn. That morning had started like every other. Board meetings, investor calls, factory reports. Then his attorney arrived carrying an old envelope sealed with dark blue wax. "I was instructed to give you this only under one condition," the attorney said. "And what condition is that?" "If I ever believed your success had made you unable to tell loyalty from convenience." Adrian laughed. "My father always did enjoy speaking in riddles." "So did he." The attorney pushed the envelope across the desk. "He wrote this 20 years ago." Adrian hesitated. His father had died 11 years earlier. The handwriting on the envelope hadn't changed. Steady, confident. He broke the seal. Inside sat one folded page. Nothing more. He unfolded it. The letter contained only 4 sentences. "Son, if the day ever comes when you no longer know who truly stands beside you, disappear. Don't ask questions. Don't explain yourself." But that was it. No signature. No explanation. No instructions. Just one impossible command. Disappear. Adrian leaned back in silence. The attorney studied him. "What do you think?" "I think my father underestimated me." The attorney didn't smile. "I hope you're right." By evening, the letter had almost left Adrian's mind. Until Victor entered his office carrying a tablet. "You need to see this." Adrian frowned. "What happened?" Victor placed the tablet on the desk. Someone had approved a multi-million-dollar transfer using Adrian's digital authorization. The problem was simple. He hadn't approved it. There has to be a mistake. "So I thought." Victor pulled up another document. Then another. Then another. Each carried Adrian's verified authorization. Each had been processed over the previous month. Someone wasn't stealing money. Someone was practicing. Learning the system. Testing limits. Adrian stared at the screen. "Who has access?" Victor hesitated. "Officially, yes. You. And unofficially?" Victor took a slow breath. Someone very close to you. That answer stayed with Adrian long after Victor left. The next morning, the board meeting felt different. Not because anyone behaved strangely. Because everyone behaved perfectly. Too perfectly. People who normally argued agreed instantly. Questions disappeared. Smiles appeared more often than usual. Even Lucas Mercer, Adrian's younger brother, seemed unusually relaxed. Lucas poured Adrian a cup of coffee before the meeting. You look exhausted. I didn't sleep much. You work too hard. Adrian smiled faintly. You've been saying that since college. Because it's true. Lucas laughed softly. You built the company. Now maybe it's time to enjoy it. The words sounded harmless. Yet something about them lingered. Later that afternoon, Adrian asked Victor to quietly investigate every unusual transaction from the past 6 months. No announcements. No accusations. No confrontations. Just facts. 48 hours later, Victor returned. His expression said everything before he spoke. You were right to ask. Adrian stood immediately. What did you find? The money isn't missing. What? It's being moved. Moved where? Victor placed another folder on the desk. Into companies that don't exist. Adrian flipped through page after page. Every shell company led nowhere. Every signature looked genuine. Every approval traced back to him. This is impossible. Victor shook his head. No. He pointed to one document. It's brilliant. Adrian looked closer. Every transaction was small enough to avoid triggering alerts. Every approval happened during meetings Adrian had actually attended. Someone understood his routine perfectly. Someone knew exactly when nobody would question his decisions. Victor finally said the sentence Adrian feared most. This wasn't planned by a stranger. It was planned by someone who knows how you think. That night Adrian drove alone. No destination. No schedule. Only questions. His father's letter rested in the passenger seat. Disappear. He stopped outside the small brick house where Samuel Reed still lived. Samuel had spent nearly 40 years caring for the Mercer family estate. After retirement, Adrian had offered him a new home. Samuel refused. I've already lived in the house I wanted, he'd said. It just happened to belong to someone else. Adrian knocked. Samuel opened the door before the second knock. You look troubled. You already knew I was coming? Samuel smiled. You only visit when your heart is louder than your mind. Adrian handed him the letter. Samuel read it once. Then folded it. I wondered when he'd finally give this to you. Adrian froze. You knew about it? Samuel nodded. He made me promise never to mention it. Why? Because advice given too early becomes noise. Adrian stared at him. What did he mean by disappear? Samuel walked into the garden without answering. He stopped beside an old oak tree Adrian's father had planted decades earlier. When this tree was young, Samuel said quietly, your father stopped watering it for nearly a month. Adrian frowned. Why would he do that? To see which roots had grown deep enough to survive. Silence settled between them. Then Samuel looked directly at him. Sometimes people are the same. Adrian felt something shift inside him. Not fear. Recognition. By the following evening, he had made the most dangerous decision of his life. He would disappear. Officially. Completely. No leaks. No warnings. Only Victor, Samuel, his attorney, and one trusted physician would know the truth. Everyone else, including Lucas, would believe Adrian Mercer was dead. The accident happened 3 days later. News helicopters filled the sky. Breaking news alerts interrupted television broadcasts. Social media exploded with tributes. Employees gathered outside company headquarters crying openly. Flowers covered the gates before sunset. Inside a secure underground safe house miles away, Adrian watched every headline appear on a wall of screens. He expected sadness. He expected chaos. He expected uncertainty. He did not expect Victor to suddenly step into the room looking visibly shaken. What happened? Adrian asked. Victor slowly handed him a tablet. You need to see who's already inside your office. Adrian looked down. The security feed had been recorded less than 20 minutes after news of his death became public. Someone had unlocked his private office. They walked straight to the hidden bookshelf, opened the concealed safe, and entered the exact code, without hesitating once. Adrian's face lost all color, because only 3 people in the entire world knew that code, and one of them had just opened the safe. Adrian stared at the security footage without blinking. The person on the screen moved with confidence. No hesitation, no searching, no panic. Whoever entered his private office wasn't guessing. They knew exactly where to go, exactly what to take, exactly how much time they had. Victor paused the recording. Adrian? But Adrian raised his hand. Play it again. The footage restarted. The figure walked into the office, opened the hidden bookshelf, entered the code, removed a small black folder, then left. No damage, no mess, no signs of forced entry. It wasn't a robbery. It was a retrieval. Someone believed they had the right to take what was inside. Adrian leaned back slowly. Who accessed the building? Victor pulled up the records. The only authorized entry after your announcement was Lucas. The room became silent. Adrian looked away from the screen. No. Victor didn't argue. He simply said, You wanted the truth. Adrian closed his eyes. Lucas. His younger brother. The person who stood beside him at their father's funeral. The person who called him every Sunday. The person who told everyone Adrian was the reason he became successful. The thought felt impossible. Then another alert appeared on the screen. Victor opened it. His expression changed. What? Victor hesitated. Your company shares. Adrian turned back. What about them? They're moving. How? Someone has begun transferring voting rights. Adrian stood. Already? Victor nodded. Your funeral hasn't even happened yet. That sentence hit harder than anything else. His funeral. Not his death. His funeral. While people were still writing condolences, someone was already planning his replacement. Adrian watched the numbers change on the screen. For the first time in years, he felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Not anger. Disappointment. Because if Lucas was behind this, it wasn't about money. There was enough money for both of them. It was about something much older. Something buried beneath years of smiles and family dinners. Something Adrian had ignored. Meanwhile, across the city, Lucas Mercer stood inside Adrian's office. The same office where they had celebrated their first billion-dollar year. The same office where Adrian had once told him, One day, this will belong to both of us. Lucas opened the black folder. Inside were documents, old agreements, private letters, and one photograph. A younger Lucas stood beside Adrian and their father. Lucas stared at the photo for several seconds. Then he placed it back. A voice behind him spoke. You shouldn't look too emotional. Lucas turned. A corporate consultant stood near the doorway. Someone might think you actually miss him. Lucas frowned. Be careful. The consultant smiled. But because it's disrespectful? He stepped closer. Or because it's true? Lucas looked away. The consultant lowered his voice. The board vote is tomorrow. I know. If you hesitate, you lose everything. Lucas tightened his jaw. I won't hesitate. But after the consultant left, Lucas remained alone in the office. And for a brief moment, he looked less like a man who had won. He looked like someone who had already lost. Back at the safe house, Adrian received another message. This time from Margaret Lewis, his attorney. I found something you need to see. A video file appeared. Adrian opened it. It showed Lucas meeting with several board members. The audio was unclear, but one sentence was obvious. Lucas pointing toward Adrian's empty chair. He built this company. The pause. But I am the one who knows how to save it. Adrian watched silently. Victor looked at him. You okay? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Finally he said, I spent 20 years defending him. His voice lowered. I never realized I was defending him from the consequences of his own choices. The next morning was Adrian's funeral. The world watched. News channels broadcast the ceremony. Executives delivered emotional speeches. Employees shared stories. Some were real. Some were rehearsed. Adrian watched from the hidden SUV. He saw people approach the coffin. He saw people cry. He saw people pretend. Then Samuel arrived. The old groundskeeper stood at the edge of the cemetery. No expensive suit. No cameras. Just a simple coat and the same worn boots he had owned for years. Victor looked surprised. He came. Adrian nodded. Of course he did. Samuel didn't speak to reporters. Didn't accept condolences. He simply placed a small envelope beside the flowers. Adrian leaned closer. What is that? Victor checked the camera angle. Can't tell. Hours later, after everyone left, Victor retrieved the envelope. Inside was a single sentence. I know you are watching. Adrian froze. What? Victor looked equally shocked. Samuel had known. Somehow, Samuel had known. A second message was written underneath. Your father tested people with silence. I learned to listen to it. Adrian sat back. For the first time since the plan began, someone surprised him. But before he could process it, Victor received another alert. His face changed. What's wrong? Victor turned the screen around. A live feed from the company headquarters. Lucas was standing before the entire executive team. The board meeting had started early, and behind him was Adrian's father's original company portrait, the one that belonged in Adrian's private office, the one that had disappeared from the safe. Lucas looked directly into the cameras. I know many of you are grieving. The employees watched silently, but Adrian left behind a company that cannot survive without strong leadership. Adrian's hands tightened. Lucas continued. I never wanted this responsibility. The pause. But sometimes life forces people to step into roles they never expected. Victor whispered. He is positioning himself as the hero. Adrian stared at the screen. Then Lucas said something that made Adrian stand immediately. Before my brother passed away, he personally told me that I was the only person he trusted to protect his legacy. The room went silent, because Adrian knew those words were a lie. He had never said them. Never. Victor looked at him. What do we do? Adrian didn't answer, because suddenly the plan had changed. This wasn't just about exposing betrayal anymore. Lucas wasn't stealing Adrian's company. He was rewriting history, making the world believe Adrian's final wish was something it never was. And then, Margaret sent one more file. The message contained only 4 words. You need to see this. Adrian opened it. The video loaded, and within seconds, his expression completely changed, because the person sitting across from Lucas in the recording was someone Adrian never expected to see, someone who had cried the loudest at his funeral, someone who had called him family, and someone who had been planning this betrayal long before anyone knew Adrian was gone. Adrian watched the video again, then again, each time hoping he had misunderstood what he was seeing. But the truth remained the same. Sitting across from Lucas in the recording was a person Adrian had trusted for more than 15 years. His former chief financial officer, Daniel Voss. The man who had helped Adrian turn a struggling company into a global empire. The man who gave a speech at the funeral describing Adrian as the greatest friend he ever had. The man who had stood beside Adrian's mother and cried. Now, in the hidden recording, he sat calmly across from Lucas. No sadness. No hesitation. Only business. Lucas pushed a folder across the table. So it's done. Daniel opened it. Once the board approves the transition, the company is ours. Adrian felt his stomach tighten. Not because of the betrayal. Because of the timing. They had planned everything before his death. The funeral. The sympathy. The speeches. The fake grief. Victor looked at Adrian. Say the word. Adrian didn't respond. For a moment, Victor expected anger. A reaction. Something. Instead, Adrian simply walked toward the window. Outside, the city continued moving. Millions of people had no idea that one of the biggest companies in the country was being quietly stolen. Then Adrian spoke. How many people know? Victor checked the reports. At least 6 executives. Maybe more. And employees? Most believe Lucas is saving the company. Adrian nodded. That hurt more than he expected. Because Lucas wasn't only taking his business. He was taking the story of his life. A week later, Lucas announced an emergency shareholder meeting. The message was simple. Adrian Mercer was gone. The company needed a new leader. And Lucas Mercer was ready. News outlets praised him. They called him the brother stepping up during tragedy. The public loved the story. A loyal family member protecting a legacy. Nobody knew the truth. Except the people watching from the shadows. Inside the safe house, Adrian studied every document. Every transaction. Every conversation. Every mistake. Because everyone made mistakes. Even brilliant people. Especially people who believed they had already won. Then Maya Ellis found the first real opening. She was a junior employee in the company's mailroom. Someone most executives walked past without learning her name. But Maya noticed things. She noticed who arrived early. Who stayed late. Who suddenly stopped following normal procedures. She noticed that Daniel Voss had been receiving confidential documents through a private channel. Documents that were supposed to require Adrian's approval. She brought the information to Victor. I don't know if this matters, she said. But something feels wrong. Victor studied her. Why bring this to us? Maya looked confused. Because everyone else keeps saying Mr. Mercer is gone. The pause. And I don't think someone who built this company deserves to have his name erased while people celebrate doing it. Victor smiled slightly. You realize this could cost you your job. Maya nodded. I know. Then why do it? She looked at the documents. Because if nobody says anything when something is wrong, then wrong becomes normal. Victor later told Adrian about her. For the first time in days. Adrian smiled. A person he barely knew had shown more loyalty than people who sat at his dinner table. That night, Adrian visited Samuel again. The old groundskeeper was trimming the same oak tree his father planted. You knew about Lucas? Samuel didn't stop working. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Samuel looked at him. Would you have believed me? Adrian stayed silent. That was the answer. Samuel placed the tool down. Your greatest weakness was never trusting people. Then what was it? Believing people only reveal themselves when they speak. Adrian looked confused. Samuel continued. Sometimes people reveal themselves when they think nobody important is watching. The words stayed with Adrian. Because suddenly he understood. The funeral wasn't the trap. The funeral was the beginning. The real test was what people did afterward. And Lucas had failed. The shareholder meeting arrived. Thousands watched online. Investors waited. Employees gathered around screens. Lucas walked onto the stage confidently. He wore the same suit he wore at Adrian's funeral. The same serious expression. The same carefully practiced sadness. I know everyone here is hurting. The audience listened. My brother was not just my family. He was my inspiration. Adrian watched from a private room nearby. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. Lucas continued. He trusted me with his greatest creation. A document appeared on the screen. The room reacted. A supposed final agreement. A document claiming Adrian wanted Lucas to lead. Executives whispered. Investors looked impressed. Victor looked at Adrian. He forged your final instruction. Adrian stood. No. Victor frowned. No. Adrian looked at the screen. He's doing exactly what I expected. Lucas smiled. And today, we honor Adrian's final wish. The doors behind the conference room opened. Every conversation stopped. Every camera turned. Every person froze. Adrian Mercer walked inside. Alive. The room became completely silent. One investor dropped his pen. Someone whispered, "No." Lucas stopped speaking. For the first time since Adrian disappeared, he looked afraid. Adrian walked slowly toward the stage. Not angry. Not shouting. Just calm. He placed his father's silver pocket watch on the table. The same watch he carried every day. Then he looked at Lucas. Please. The pause. Continue. Nobody moved. Lucas stared at him. He couldn't finish. Adrian turned toward the executives. Before anyone asks how this happened. He looked around the room. I wanted to know something. The screens behind him changed. Security footage appeared. Private meetings. Financial transfers. Secret conversations. The room erupted. Daniel Voss lowered his head. Lucas stood completely still. The truth was no longer hidden. Adrian didn't need revenge. He needed everyone to see. Because lies survive in darkness. But they rarely survive under a spotlight. Lucas finally spoke. Why? Everyone looked at him. His voice cracked. Why did you have to be better at everything? The room became quiet. I was always your little brother. Adrian looked at him. And I always wanted you beside me. Lucas shook his head. No. A tear formed in his eyes. You wanted me behind you. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Because part of it was true. Adrian had spent years building an empire. But he had forgotten that people weren't employees. They weren't projects. They weren't pieces on a board. They were human. The investigation continued. Daniel and the others faced legal consequences. The company survived. But Adrian changed the way it operated. Maya Ellis became the youngest member of a new leadership program created to reward honesty and courage. Victor became the head of company security. Samuel received the greatest honor of all. The company's new leadership center was named after him. When reporters asked Adrian why he chose someone so ordinary to honor, his answer surprised everyone. Because when everyone around me was watching my money, Samuel was watching my character. Months later, Adrian returned to the same cemetery where he had watched his own funeral. He stood beneath the tree his father planted. The same tree Samuel had protected for decades. He opened his father's letter one more time. This time, the words felt different. Because he finally understood. His father wasn't telling him to disappear because people were dangerous. He was telling him to disappear because sometimes success creates a world where everyone shows you what you want to see. Sometimes you have to remove the spotlight to discover who is still standing when nobody is watching. Adrian placed the letter back into his pocket. The funeral had not shown him who wanted his fortune. It showed him who deserved his trust. And the greatest lesson he learned was not about wealth. It was about people. Because a person can spend their entire life building an empire and still lose everything if they don't know who is standing beside them. If this story reminded you that loyalty is worth more than money, leave a comment sharing what you would have done in Adrian's position. Would you have disappeared to discover the truth, or would you have confronted the betrayal immediately? And if you enjoyed this emotional story of trust, courage, and second chances, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories where the truth always finds a way to come out.